Welcome back to Realize Your Potential with Mike and Travis. We are here to continue our series on mindset and managing your mindset. And we are blessed and lucky to have an amazing guest with us today. Not only because she's done amazing things in her life, but she's been an amazing person as we've got to have her in our lives for quite some time now. I don't want to tell you guys how old I am. Some of you probably know, but probably, 20 years now. So pretty excited to have Danielle Slaton on the show today. Thank you for coming, Danielle. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us a little bit. So for those who don't know, she's one of those guests where it's just like, Google me, right? Like, just Google me, right? Like, there doesn't have to be like this whole like explanation, but I'm going to give it anyways, all right? Danielle played college soccer at Santa Clara University. She was a 4-time conference player, got awarded on that level for 4 years straight. She won a national championship in her last year there at Santa Clara, was defensive player of the College Cup there for that tournament, then went on to get drafted professionally, was a first pick in the draft for the Carolina Courage, won the league defender of the year there, went on to play in France in their top league for one of their teams there, and played for the U.S. national team from 2000 to 2005 and has a silver medal at the Olympics. I mean, that's just a little bit, like, that's just a taste of what, that's just a little taste of it, you know what I mean? So just fantastic, amazing accomplishments, but one of the most humble people I have ever met. And when we start talking a little bit, I'm going to jump in and talk about like where I saw that humbleness come, but just an amazing, amazing guest to have with us. And really has performed at the highest levels in her field. And that's really what we're about, is really trying to find people who have reached that top percent in their fields so that they can share their insights so that they can help you in whatever field you are reach the top percentage in your field. So thank you, Danielle, for joining us today. Before we jump into the discussion, we always like to say, please like, share, and subscribe. It really, really helps the channel. And then, like we talked about last week, please comment. Jump in the comments. Let's build a community together. Specifically around mindset, I think that's a really good thing, is helping each other keep our mindsets in the right place. So, there we are. Danielle, like, let's start from the very beginning. So, you were born in a crib in a manger, and God looked down and smiled upon you and said, she is going to be one of the best soccer players in the whole world. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like, going from, okay, I now know that I'm pretty good at this. Like, I think I can do this at the college level. I think I can do this at the professional level. Like, when did that start, and how did that traverse through your high school career and up through college?
Things are a little bit different now, I think, in youth sports. But for me, I was a little bit of a late bloomer in terms of specializing. I played a lot of different sports growing up. I did softball and track and soccer and volleyball. I did ballet until I was an 8th grader. So I did a lot of different things and really didn't focus on soccer until I was in high school. Now you're seeing kids who are specializing far, far earlier. But for me, I really didn't specialize, I would say, and focus solely on soccer until I was a sophomore or junior in high school. And that's when
Wait, what? Wait a second. You reached these levels and you didn't focus on it until you were like a sophomore? Like, that's crazy.
Well,
I guess playing multiple sports is a good thing, though.
It was a different time. And I do think, for me, I've always been a person who's been very curious and interested in a lot of things. So, I think if I had have done soccer the whole time, I would have been burned out by the time I got to high school or college. For me, I really enjoyed the rhythm of a season and the rhythm of a year. And I got to play soccer for a little while, and then I got to run track for a little while. And I think it also, as you mentioned, really helped me physically develop different muscles and different strengths, prevention of injury. flexibility, all of those things. So for me personally, that variety I think was an essential piece of my success. And I'll be forever grateful for that. And I also think mentally, I have a lot of interests in different things. And so if I only had the ability to focus on one thing, I think I would have gotten bored or tired and wouldn't have been able to give my 100% focus to it.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is I was thinking about mindset as you were talking about that, and sort of the two different sort of schools of thought in terms of how do people get better in regards to being mindful of their mindset is being open versus being rigid. You know what I mean? And it sounds to me that throughout your early career, like you're open to a lot of things and curious about a lot of things, to your experience as a young person, you know? So.
Yeah. I come from a family of teachers. Both my parents were high school teachers. And, you know, I feel like part of our family culture and part of the attitude and the environment I grew up in was a mindset and an attitude of constant learning, right? You always have the ability to learn and to get better and to do more. And I feel like what was rewarded and what was reinforced for me was giving your best effort all of the time. And internally within our family, that's what was told to me. Externally, I feel like I came from a very athletic family, right? Like I was a fast athlete. I could run. I was quick. And externally, I used to get the message of, oh, you're fast, that's why you're good at this. Or, oh, you were born with this God-given ability. And yes, I was born with certain abilities, but I also think I worked really, really hard at it. And focusing on the work is what I think ultimately made me successful and enabled me to continue to grow and to get better.
Gotcha. Can you reflect back on sort of your experience in high school and maybe just talk briefly about, you know, maybe what your actions were different than your teammates, just in terms of mindset with working hard? You know, these are the things that I need to do that might, you know, set me apart from others.
Separate you. Yeah.
I was fortunate that I played with a lot of really, really talented women who went on to have amazing careers in college. And also I would say even in the national team too. So I feel like one of the reasons of my success was I was around people who also had a mindset that was very driven and very disciplined too. So when you're around people like that, it kind of reinforces that in you. So I would say that was one piece. But one reason I think when I reflect back on some of my success, I think I treated every training and every game the same. Like, to me, training wasn't different than a game. I wasn't like, oh, it's a big game, or it's the Final Four, or something is bigger and more important, so I have to behave differently. For me, whether it was a boring old training in the middle of preseason or it was one of the biggest games of my career, I approached it in the same way. I always set goals before every training, before every game, and I tried to be as even-keeled emotionally about it. I think there's goods and bads to that. I think sometimes because I was so even-keeled or tried to take the emotion out of it, I didn't always enjoy as much as I could or celebrate as much as I could, and sometimes I have regrets about that and wanting to go back and enjoy the journey a little bit more. But I do think that my discipline and my approach to the job of it is part of what enabled me to set goals, tick those goals off, and continue to excel.
What was that experience like going in, because you mentioned the national team and sort of having this consistent emotional demeanor? Like, what was that difference like for you? Like, not quite sure what question I'm getting at, but the national team, I mean, it's a completely different stage, right? Now you have gazillions of people watching the game. I'm sure there's tons of pressures. Of course, I don't know what those pressures would be, right? But I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit to that and sort of how you weathered that, if anything different than what you're describing.
Yeah, I would say from a physical perspective, the game is the same, right? The game is the same if you're playing at a high level, the game is the same in high school and college and professionally and on the national team. It's just a whole lot faster. And so
that's what my daughter says when she went from each level is just like it moves so fast.
Right.
You know, my daughter plays college soccer. Yeah,
exactly. So what you do at the college level might take 4 touches. What you do at the professional level might take 2 touches, and what you're doing at the national team, you have to do in 1 touch. So your speed of thought, your speed of play has to be that much faster. So I would say that, you know, from a physical perspective and from a on-field perspective, that's one of the biggest differences. But from a mental perspective, it was, I mean, the amount of stress involved with playing on the national team is high. Like your cortisol levels are, you know, off the chart. And the only thing I can compare it to is just like, imagine if every day you go to work and you think, if I don't do my job at the highest level today, tomorrow I will not have a job because there is somebody else to replace me. So that level of stress is incredibly high, but you learn to manage it. And I think the people who can succeed at the national team are the ones who thrive in that. And that pressure, we used to always say, pressure is a privilege. People would be killing to be in this position, to experience this pressure. But I think that attitude is really part of the reason that we were such a success and part of the reason that enabled us to win in the way that we did.
I love that. I love that insight, and I really, really want our listeners or watchers to really, really hear what Danielle talked about. There's some really key points that have come up every single guest, and even Mike and myself, as we talked about what made us successful. There are key threads that any of you can use, right? So for those people who are out there going, well, I don't play soccer, so that doesn't apply to me. Wrong, right? What did Danielle talk about? Who did she surround herself with? Episode after episode after episode, we have talked about, and our guests have talked about, who do you surround yourself with? Surround yourself with people who make you better, right? The second piece is she treated everything she did the exact same way. She was disciplined. She focused on practice just as much as she focused on the game. And I can tell you, are you doing that in your business life? Are you focusing on practicing your pitch? Are you doing that in your admin life? Like, are you going to school and learning new traits and learning new skills at LinkedIn Learning or any other type of learning institution to make yourself better every day? And are you prepping for your success? And then the idea of when pressure came, how do you handle that pressure? And that pressure doesn't just come on the field, which we all know for athletes it does, but it can come in any walk of life. You got a big audition. Remember Hal talking about walking into each audition with the same mindset that I'm going to win this job and I'm going to do this the right way, right? It applies here. And so I want you to walk away with this, though we are going to focus a lot on soccer because that is the field that Danielle excelled in. What she did to excel in that field applies to every single thing that you do in life. And she's just telling you, I was able to do it at the highest level. You can do it at the highest level in your life if you take some of these key takeaways. So thank you so much for sharing that part of your story, because I think it's key for people to continue to understand that success is really repetitive. They're not going to be 100 different paths to success. There's really going to be a few things that really successful people do that you've got to beat into your head. And what I hope you take away from any one of our guests or anything is, this is how this person did that specific thing, right? That all of us need to do. This is how this person surrounded themselves with the right people. Oh, that sounds more like me. I'm going to jump into that and I'm going to do that. And so, excuse me, I really wanted folks to take that away from the conversation, because it was really, really good. It was really good insight.
Thanks. It makes me, when you say that, Travis, it makes me think about this quote that I think of all the time, like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I see that all of the time, actually, when I'm at the gym. So for me, when I'm doing sets where, we might be in a group class or something, and we'll do a timed set of something, And when the instructor, when the coach says go, and to me, like when you say go, like, let's go. It's time to go. Like I have, I have a minute to work. Like I need every second of that 60 seconds in order to get my reps in. And I look around the room, and when some people say, or when some people hear the word go, then they're like, okay, let me pick up my weights and let's start to get going. And I also see that at the end of the set, right? Like the coach will be counting down and they'll be like 3, 2, 1, and people will stop at 3. I'm like, what? That is not the way I am built, right? If you tell me I have 60 seconds to work, I am going to work for those 60 seconds. Yes, it's hard. Yes, I don't feel great. But to me, how I do that and how I approach even that one little minute of bicep curls or whatever it is how I approach everything. And having that focus and that discipline is really important to me. And as you mentioned, like I see it manifested in so many different aspects of my life. And even when I'm observing other people, I can look at them and say, oh yeah, I'm built differently than that, or my mindset is different than that. And I really look at it as athleticism as a transferable skill, right? Like who cares? Who cares that I can kick a soccer ball 40 yards right now that I'm 40 years old? Like that's not helpful to me in my life anymore.
You mean you don't go into an interview and they're like, hey, by the way, the last question is, how far can you kick a soccer ball?
Oh,
because that's going to determine your next job.
Right.
Nobody says that to you?
Right. No, I don't get that one on the interview list too often. But I mean, it's all of these things that I've learned as an athlete that I rely on every day. And so that's kind of my own like little personal mantra is, it's athleticism as a transferable skill.
I love that. Mike, we got to bottle up what she said for that.
Don't ask me to do that.
I'm telling you right now, like that point of being the whole idea of 60 seconds and working from second 1 to second 60, I guarantee you I will replay that over and over again. The way you said that and how important it is the key to mindset. It is what we have been trying, in my opinion, I think it's what we've been trying to epitomize as we're talking through this series, is that mentality. And if you can get to that mentality, success will come in. It doesn't matter what you do. Success will come. That was a drop the mic. And when people say built differently, you said that a little bit in here, like that's kind of the new thing, man. I'm built different. No, that's what it means to be built different, right? And that's
Can I add one more thing too? Another thing I was kind of thinking about as we were, as I was getting ready for today, of another aspect that I really feel like I learned as an athlete and try to implement in my life regularly is this idea of working on your strengths as much as working on your weaknesses. So when I was a young player, I used to have coaches tell me all the time, you got to work on your weaknesses. One of my strengths, right? I was a left-footed player. It's a little bit rare, not as common as being right-footed. And so I would always have coaches when I was young, you got to work on your right foot. You got to work on your right foot. And yes, like my right foot needed to be to a certain level to be adequate. But part of the reason that I made it in college and I made the national team was because I was one of the best left-footed defenders in the world. And that's what made me special. And that's what made me different. And that's the reason I was on the field. I wasn't on the field because my right foot was average. I was on the field because my left foot was great. And so part of...
You're killing the game right
Part of what I always tell young people when I'm talking to them, and one of the things that I learned as a player was I needed to know and have understanding about what made me special and what was the differentiator for me. And I needed to spend as much time investing in that aspect of my game as I did in the other areas that I needed to bring up to par. And I look at it as like Like if you have a class and you have a midterm that's worth 30% and a final that's worth 70%, which one are you going to study for more? You're going to study for the final because it's worth 70% of your grade, and that's what's going to make the difference. That's what's really going to move you forward. More than just getting, doing well on the 30%. You've got to hit it out of the park when it comes to that 70% or that final. And so to me, I think that was a real game changer in my career, was spending the time on my strengths. Plus, it feels good to be good. And so it's more fun sometimes to work on things that you're good at. And so finding that right balance of working on my weaknesses when I needed to, but also really investing in my strengths was a big piece of my success too.
Gosh, you know what? Let's take a pause here, because I think there were so many gems in this. Like, I don't think we can pack any more into this one episode. Like, I think we need a little pause. We're gonna pick up next week right where we left off, and dive, I think, a little bit more into. We talked about how you worked through to become great, and I'd love to hear, love to hear like those times where it didn't go as well. And so we can kind of talk through that and how you got through those things and work through those things. Rewind this episode, folks. Rewind this episode. There are so many great gems in here that I think you can apply to athletics, you can apply to business, you can apply to just life in general. So write them down, take some notes, and please comment about what you took away from today's show, that you feel like, man, I can go use that today, or I can go improve in this area today. Thank you, Danielle, and we'll see all of you next week.